is 7:06 p.m. on January 8th. We'll officially begin the planning commission meeting for the month of January. We will start with a roll call. Approval.
James Whitesides.
Alpha Miller.
Colin Forsythe.
Simon Berger.
Excellent. Has everyone had a chance to review previous month's minutes? Any comments, questions, and or concerns? Someone like to move to approve?
Make a motion. Minutes.
Second.
All right, so the next topic on our agenda tonight is the public hearing for our residential design and manufactured home standards. So Maggie, I will pass it to you to tee this up.
Morning in progress. Sorry, okay. So the first item on here is for a code amendment to see chapter 1836. This is our residential design standards. I'll just kind of go through the overview on the staff report for attendance or listening. So, city's housing action plan identified a need for increased in the city of Leavenworth. It's included a need to create more diverse housing options, lower prices, and to adopt land use policies and regulations that support smaller homes patterns and household size in the community. According to the housing action plan, the most common household size within the city of Leavenworth is a single person or a 1 to 2 person household, and those together are approximately 76% of households in the city. Again, this is based on the housing action plan data from 2021. We will be updated, but this makes sense. Housing action plan further recommended the review of manufactured housing siting and form regulations to reduce barriers to the production of manufactured housing as a way to increase housing supply, diversity, and affordable housing options, and to provide housing to households. Just as a informational year, 2015, the city has only issued one building. So we do not. Some of these we're trying to look at how can we divide this, choose those barriers. Planning Commission docket prioritize the review manufacturer standards as the 6th item to address here. And the reason was for that there were no barriers. We have looked at this in November and December and identified a few standards that create some barriers to manufactured home siting and placement. And we also discussed the recommendation of tiny home dwellings to be permitted in residential zones as a useful tool to accommodate smaller households and to create diversity in housing options. Tiny home dwellings are related as single family dwellings by both the International Code and the labor ministries. Allowing tiny homes in residential zones offers several benefits, being but not limited to greater affordability, diversity in housing options, sustainable living, and flexible use of land. I was going to share screen and go through some of those changes here for you. Sorry, guys. Embarrassing during hearing. Yeah, let me get you now. Letting me know. Thank you. I wanted to share screen and just walk through the changes did go through with people, the what I couldn't not do here. There's two sections to this, 18.025. Okay. This is the residential dwelling standards and the red shows the blue shows. The initial statement talks about all standards apply to all single family dwellings, two family dwellings and duplexes. And I then gave an example. There was a letter under appropriate text. Garages, residential accessory. This, manufactured homes which are listed below. We just added the word unit here. Dwelling unit is what it's in there. So if you see unit added, it's just for that definition. We modified, we kept A, B, and C the same, which is A is talking about if the primary entry door of the dwelling unit doesn't face there's a certain glazing that's required. Single family duplex. Didn't remove any. We didn't change anything with the entry porches being constructed in the part. We didn't change anything with attached garages. Here again, this was just dwelling units. It said dwellings were consistent. 8 side mixed stone and loading standards. Here we remove this. Dwelling unit shall be permanent. Meeting the international. Required, it's just some clarity. Did recommend removal of H5J for single family only, because we talked about snow loading standards above. And then this talked about some no more than 12 inches of foundation will be exposed on walls facing the street. This is very hard to like go back to the fact and make sure they did it. It's not a you were like, you know what? That's we're gonna build it to code. So we recommend removal of that. Siding extending below the top of foundation, 1 to 2 inches. Again, it's not go out after the fact to measure and do all this. And so the more concerned about the building code requirements. So we recommend those are in our discussions. Here are the all supporting materials need to resemble residential foundation. If you look down below, get to it. Then this all wheels concept. Moving fast. And so I don't know if there's any questions, but I'll try to get through it. Next section, 1836-028, is our manufactured home standards. Did equal letter A the same, letter B, we just the above. Manufactured I would LC 1836-028, which as you noted above here is to meet the size mix. Any manufactured home placed in a city. It also needs to be set on a permanent foundation and permanently connected to it as specified by. We would be looking for the manufacturer details and whatever they foundation. Key definition is it's for the manufacturer. We then move the all supporting materials resembling a typical residential foundation into this section. This was kind of formatted added this language, the manufacturer to have a local design standard. And we only reference. And then we removed this designated manufacturer. definition, which kind of limited the size of what manufacturer could be. Don't have it. The definition said it had to be these two parallel sections that equal a certain width. So like it required a certain size of manufacturer. Probably the number one barrier that we saw as the issue with our manufacturing. It's still new, still probably though it's still designed to meet our. So I think that's the biggest change here is that Google of required to be designated manufacturer. I can go in, I can pull that definition. The final section, 1836.031, is a new section. The planning commission discussed previously, we wanted to look at. There are currently permitted use in the residential zones. So adding some standards for those, they looking at them as a type of manufacturing. They are. So we wanted to incorporate. So the first section that we covered was that the dwelling unit, tiny home dwelling needs to comply with policy 5D 1836.028. So they needed to have skirting materials that resemble it. They still need to meet that. So that's identified. So they would have to meet the 85 pounds. Then they need to be designed and permitted in accordance with the current international residential code, which there is a specific section. See that it helps in what those standards are. So built to the building codes adopted by the state and the city, and then also labor and industry standards. We have to look at both and whichever could be suitable. Any standard for that. Not possible. So do both of those. And where tiny home dwellings are located in a tiny home park, should be regulated by the standards. 15 till such a time as to regulate. So that added after a review with people. Or like setup. And so that was just big. Right now, many of our CUP until we have standards that are specific for that. Clarification of what regulations would that any part. This there were several changes to definitions or updates to definitions that were recommended by legal. Modular home is referenced in several locations in the LMC, but it was not ever explicitly defined. So this definition would be added to the LMC and it's consistent with CWs. It's the exact same. So modular home means a fact-based structure designed primarily for use as a dwelling connected to the required utilities that plumbing, heating, and electrical systems contained therein, does not contain its own running gear and must be mounted on foundation. And modular home does not include a mobile home or a manufacturer. So it's just added for clarity. We treat modular homes as like a stick built in the city. again, this is a new term in our definitions.
Essentially, it's the RCW.
Exactly, and just, it's a copy of these marks. And then tiny home dwelling, or dwelling, common tiny. We reference it as a tiny home dwelling, so that one. Dwelling is for consistency with some. User. It means a residential dwelling unit that a built field is no longer than square feet. Instead of stating including kitchen, bathroom, sleeping, living area, and must be, the definition from the RCW, but says with permanent provision from the station built to the Washington State. In accordance with. It was updated just again to reflect the RCW. And then changes the term park model comes up in our RV park code. And we just wanted to be, but then it wasn't defined anywhere, so legal art definition is not on page 6, just doesn't clearly define type of housing to differentiate it from it. Oh, or manufacturing. Straight again, RCW, park model in the recreation. And selection. Did have some discussion with the planning commission at last meeting about certain models kind of on them, I believe. Could be permitted. This is verification as currently that. But I just want these different terms within the code. Believe that that's the extent of code changes and additions. Stop sharing screen.
Any questions or comments from the commission in regards to stuff?
With the, I have a question on that very last thing, the addition of park model. I thought that park model could be a tiny house.
It can be a tiny house too. I mean, so it could be.
So the way that we defined it, so the way that it's written, that it's only exists in the code in reference to RV parks, that. So that means you couldn't put it as like an ADU in your tiny house.
I think if it met the definition of the park model.
Will still be the load.
Our difference with the park model is what's the tiny home is the park. The tiny home just.
I think it's park, it's flipped.
I thought the park model was pretty much, I couldn't use the term trailer, but remained on its wheels.
Yes, yes.
I think tiny house did too.
But it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to.
Like, see, and that's what I'm interested in, like, I don't know what definition of park model we are using. Do we reference a definition that we can go to that's concrete that we can, so.
A park model could be considered a tiny home.
Yep. It's a single wide.
But the way that we have defined park model does not preclude someone from saying if their dwelling unit
It's a park.
is a park model but can meet another definition, then they could place it on a residential lot.
It just needed a definition also because it's used in another section of code under the park, which is specific to like K-Lake. They have park model RVs.
Gotcha.
And so we needed that definition in there to just define it. But if it means also the definition of a functional for the purposes of placement as a home. that or as a manufacturer. So I would,
So that unit can morph into a category that we have defined. Then-
so would you recommend, so maybe recommending a clarification like 1836?
No, I
Tiny
think,
home child. It's pretty,
yeah, I think it's
from my,
fine.
perspective, the building, the opinion and land.
That's what I wanted to, that's, yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Difference too with park models.
yes, they
That's
have,
the
like,
one.
they have a special safety. But I don't know,
It's still,
Yeah.
somebody's like, yes, this is a park model, it's approved by LNI and whatnot. Like, that doesn't mean because it meets that definition that you'd be like, well, it's only allowed in an RV park.
right,
You can be like, well, it also meets the definition of a tiny house or of a
yeah. we would
whatever.
classify it as-
Place for, yeah, that's all I wanted to be sure.
Any other discussion? All right, it is 7:27 PM. We will officially open the public hearing. So now opening the public hearing on LNC 18.36 residential design manufacturing standards. It's an opportunity for community to have their voices heard from our audience.
Yes, yeah. Since we have a virtual person.
First, one spoken. Okay.
It is 7:28 PM. We will officially close the public hearing. Uh, Anyone like to put forward a motion to approve?
To approve the proposed code amendment. The board consideration, testimony, adopting. That
7%. All those in favor of approving said changes to LLC 1836? And the motion passes. Next, topic on our discussion tonight is, public hearing for T.04.15 administrative deviation. So we will. 7:29, we will officially open the public for administrative deviation, and I'll turn it over to Maggie for the steps.
So this is a very minor change to our administrative deviation section for 015. This is in response to our changes to building height in 2022, 35 to 30 feet in residential zones. It's not include the multifamily zones, so it's just 8 or 6, we changed that building height, building height. Currently, we allow for 10% deviation from the standards, which is building height in all zones. So this code change would eliminate the ability for somebody in the R6 or R8 zoning district to apply for a deviation. They would be restricted to that 30-foot max height, that average from ridge to be on a pitch roof or highest point. I did receive one public comment or one comment member just asking about, they had concerns. Family zone. Especially when it's a budding. throw that out there. So, hold that. I know we discussed it, it's originally as drafted, I had it. We talked about that flexibility in code for multifamily because most multifamily districts are tracked to build more units and we have to go up to, especially with that. We actually did a deviation for North House Apartments around Riverbend. They built one of their never received any about deviation request. And then instead. And an example of a problem. I do understand the concern of building use. That's what we address. I wanted to throw that out there. It's concern. But as drafted, this would only apply to. That is the only change to this code. Voted in the staff report is.
I personally don't feel like we need to remove height, but I also you can still do variance. So basically just a simpler route for making a deviation that was not noticeable. But because I just feel like the lowering the height limit was very.
Is that a response, is that a response to the max building that?
It was actually, I think, before those went up. Their crossing story, like, there's like zero lot line ADUs in the back.
Yep, I know exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, it's kind of on a hill, so.
So it really looks like, yeah.
So it was more in response to that, and then Stafford.
No, just to clarify, none of those, they didn't get the 10% deviation.
No, they were all within.
35, but
They
it
were
was midpoint due to bridge.
Yeah.
Staff meetings. And now the station. Gave them that without a variance. It's still by from the further if you're on a conforming lot. Non-conforming lot, and
Yeah. And then there's-
but this would, if they have concern with the administrator being given that. They still have like requirements, if you look at the code. Meet.
And is the city of Leavenworth into giving those variances or not?
We get, I mean, if they can hit all for a TA, the 10% deviation, I think we have granted quite a few.
Okay,
Especially if if they're asking for, typically it's a deviation for lot coverage, things like that, especially if they're adding an ADU and it's additional housing, like, hey, we'll grant you that. If you're adding 2,000 units.
sure.
If they can prove that it's consistent with the comp plan, that it's, you know, not, over that 10%, 10% is very minimal. You know, a whole lot of deviation, and that's why it's administrative. It gives us that flexibility and our comp plan. The height is just a big hot topic. And, with, you know, a lot of our existing neighborhoods, wanting to keep that. You know, if it's safe.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so the. Is
30 is now.
30, 5-foot differential on. Almost.
Well, but the 10% you think about, the height limit is 30 and you want a 10%.
My worry is to be a little too restrictive here, and the only reason I say that is because if, you know, like Stafford Street project or Prospect Street, when you see the one, it looks crazy, but when you see 10 of them built next to each other, it doesn't, right? And so I don't want to be hyper restrictive on the height, thinking that, you know, yes, one will look weird around normal ramblers, 2-story, 1.5, 2-story classic traditional style homes, but I don't feel like restrictive nature. But if the variance is there, you can click all the boxes, I guess, then sounds like they've taken it away, we've just made another avenue to get there. So
So just for the record, the variance process is still allowed for lots that are 6,000 square feet in this R6.
gotcha. So if you have less than.
If you had a 4,000. It really apply to those historic neighborhoods that a lot of the houses are, so, it's just those infill projects, so if somebody built, they would, you know, they'd be able to third. Which I think a lot of the community was in support of. We got a lot of feedback of them, of the community wanting to. Think that,
No, I understand what you're saying. I just agree with Mr. Whiteside when he says that the difference is nominal because 30-foot building is gonna look giant in the normal old residential zone. 33-foot building will look nominally more giant.
And this did come up with those two projects.
Right. Promise.
It didn't come up with those two projects specifically, and again, like we have a 35-foot height and go for. But people normally kind of built to that.
You don't see the max.
So even more, you know, answer you, all of them are built to. So. You know, we should see when things were probably not in the infill projects, that when started to get some. So in response to that, it found this was kind of a.
Was this specifically requested? So it'd be okay.
Feel a bit torn because it's like, there's that, but. Yeah, and like you said, that a lot of members of the public and the council very, very concerned. Building height and wanted to be really sure. Like we set, it's like. This limit. But the reason for the 10% deviation is for when you have an exceptional scenario. Just like, I just feel like you have to, right, yeah, you have to show that you have a reason.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing, I've written lots of deviations, and it's like, oh, this is how I wanna go, you know, 30 square feet over the lot coverage allowance, because we have this really big wraparound porch. Like, you know, a huge porch isn't, like, it doesn't even look like building. It's not like I wanna put a wall right here. But really, it's a small lot, like, you allow the deviation for the porch. It's like, our, I don't know, on my own property, I got a deviation on the rear setback because I don't have an alley. I wanted to build my 300 square foot ADU close to the back property line as possible, which is the 15-foot setback. 1 acre, half acre, county lots on my back fence. Like, really nice. Build it 13.5 feet from my rear property line instead of 15. It's really tiny, like it's not impacted. You know, it's like you have to have a circumstance that allows it. So I'm just thinking of like, if somebody is building on a hill, like there's the houses on the corner of Cedar and Kelly, where the hill goes down, and they built the one in from the corner, and then they just finished the one on the corner. And I'm like, the Cedar Street side you know, so you have like a standard two-story house. But then on,
Yeah.
I'm like, you really kind of be pushing that height limit, even though you don't see the alley. Like you see the height. The Cedar Street side, but you have to measure the height, the average brick. That's what it's like. So they're probably really tight, you know, so it's just something like that, like, oh, I'm on a hill, the way it graded out, I just want an extra foot, you know? And then like, to be like, no, this one thing, height only is like an ultimate limit, seems like.
Be careful, do it constantly. Do it.
To bring it to them, like saying this is on the target. If your recommendation, this was just something. I pulled this up just so you know what, like, it's basically my job, right? This comes in, I have to make this. Talks about. We have the authority to rule on the facility of this title, special standards. Necessary to fit develop. And other constraints. And it has. My discretion to require a formal application for variance. So somebody could come in and request, say, it doesn't fit development standards. We do have the discretion if they meet all. Does say deviation is not a right. It is a special exception from the regulations for which a justifiable need an extraordinary circumstance. And I think that was something that maybe the council giving. But if you really read the code, you have to demonstrate exception. It is those exceptions.
I'm following that.
They
Granted.
got granted deviations for lot coverage.
Lot.
And a lot of that was because a lot of that was for, because they were having ADU as well. So we thought, you know what, you're putting 2 units on a lot that we're supposed to build just one. Give you that deviation. Or if they wanted to put in a covered front porch, and we allow that approach, the 8 feet front yard setback for that aesthetic feel, we give them that feedback. Yeah, we want porch, you know. So, and that was consistent with our comp plan and our development. We just wanted, they need to figure out, like, you know, where should justify it. These have in the past been kind of just pay for it. Because there weren't great standards. It says there's an acceptable, but when you look at the standard, it says it doesn't. Development. Okay, so, as long as it's greater than 10%, and it's for a dimensional standard that, and then not material detrimental to the pain or injury to the property in the same district. We're looking at the neighborhoods. So if somebody's asking for a height deviation and every hop around is a single story, that could issue. Additional shadow. But it does make it hard for staff, in some of those residential zones. We do wanna. Are there ADUs to the block? It's kind of the same circumstance there, I think.
Built like 2 years ago, couldn't build. Even that 5 foot. Would limit ability. Having more restriction.
The idea is that. Right. Which, that's the question for everybody.
That's a hard thing to.
Yeah, I mean, totally respect the opinion of a lot of the community to hold on to look at the character. But we're. motion is we're thinking about 30 years. Yes, we do have to build up. We don't build up, we build out. Really. We've already started the process. I guess we can deny this. Do the path.
So you're kind of say, yeah, we don't recommend report, or there's something I need to speak, or just like. Study session. And we even talk about it during our going meeting, like, this was, this was a docket item, and we don't. recommend it As a agency, it's not your opportunity. If that's where we want to go.
The only changes that I. Yeah, makes sense. Then, yeah.
Because you might handcuff somebody who actually needs it. Yeah, we recently, or the city council has recently added a minimization idea as well. If you, I mean, it's gonna look like a max building like the Stafford Street, but it allows you, extra space above your third level if you have it for ducting and whatever else needed, especially in condominiums where, you know, square footage is at a maximum, and you're a minimum, so you need every square foot you can get, so to be able to tuck things in above or below spaces. And this is, again, I mean, I'm speaking to special projects that might happen, but this is somewhat restrictive, and it doesn't seem like necessary.
I think it would be helpful to show them like a lot of. Right, that we have here. It is helpful.
I was trying to find a chart that showed that, but maybe you just brought.
Thinking is not, I mean, we're 35, it. And like I said, I could go back and the deviations we did, but we really did very few, and I think they were.
The deviation of not. It's
I think-
perceived.
Yeah, the 30-foot building itself is gonna be perceived. That is the 3-foot, I mean, that's not. It's nominal once you go that big, especially in, you know, the 4 old residential buildings.
Should I track how many, should I just go back like 1 or 2 years?
Anyway, 24 months, how many specifically, can you see if anyone?
I think I denied one that was for lot coverage and.
Okay,
What?
so you
I think the same thing, like information about like, because I think
We approved most of them, but there's a decision written for each one that shows how they met this criteria.
I think that was the concern from the council. That was my impression, that they were like, if you allow the 10% deviation, then the height limit becomes meaningless because you just grant acceptance willy-nilly.
Yeah.
So I think emphasizing like showing that process of like
need.
to actually go through and make sure that they check all these boxes and that they have a reason and that it's not having a detrimental impact. Again, I requested in my right full like page and a half letter about all the ways that it's not detrimental to the neighborhood and how it fits with the comp plan and why I'm asking for it. You know, it's not just like,
Yeah.
Can you just do this, please?
Pretty explicitly stated.
and especially if we don't grant too many for height, be perfect. Like, I think this is something that has kind of got maybe, you know, the worry about it, you love the topic, but if you stand back a little bit, look at this, realistically, pragmatically, it really feels like that this is an extra add that we don't probably necessarily need to, you know, let's not throw another, you know, extra in here if necessary. Just,
And then we can just kind of start here. It would be a good discussion.
Sure.
I think if we want to recommend that we don't. be an option, and then they have that. Like, yes, we do, but I'm just, at this point, we do have options, I think, if I can pull the last 24 months. How many deviations we've done, I can show how many we're for. They can see that number, and seeing that number helps us to. And what was the adjustment that we did those, maybe?
That's perfect, because her impression was, or that they were worried about that we proved that, hey, these are not happening willy-nilly, they have to be justified, so, you know,
It has to be extraordinary.
thank you. Sure.
And I think, yeah, the one that I recall, was one of the 5 things. And maybe the extra foot.
I don't know, it's probably like, if the buildings were all the same height, but it's just because it was like on a hill. And you measured from somewhere.
Can you just go dump some dirt in there and change the grade? Make me feel like the building fit, you
It's
know?
finished, right?
Yeah, exactly, like, well, I'm not finished yet, I gotta dump trucks.
So I don't think it's happening as much as maybe the. Maybe we're fixing. We fixed it. Our company does. You know, option. What's. We would be kind of taking away from that, but also.
And that's what I think. James is up.
Change the height in multi-family, so we could bring stuff. Anyway,
All right, well, first we'll open it up to. 53, we'll open the floor for public comment. Deviation.
About to stand up, we're gonna just do.
If you just state your name and your address.
I'll be standing on 6 First Street. I completely agree with everything you just said. First of all, it's only residential. So if we can't say that this happening, deviation has been given, and it goes against the flexibility and the comp plan that they already established, approved. No, it just, that's what it's there. Also, there is a precedent of this administrative deviation being restricted to the staff. Anything else, or would this be the only time? Restricted, I think it's precedent. Because when it's council, it's decisions, staff, the staff, that's true. So, yes, I would say respectfully. Unless they can prove that there is actually data driven reason that you do, that you have to act. And there isn't.
Any other public comments? All right, 7:55. All right, so what do we want to do? Should we wait till next week and discuss with council, or do you want to?
I could make a motion to deny and. Yes, that's fine. I move to deny first code amendment. Findings of fact and law with the staff report in consideration of public testimony. Not. Sorry, that's okay. I like your-
Motion to deny by Maggie, second. Simon, all those in favor of denying?
I think I regard that.
No, I think it's really good.
No, I was like reading through it.
I think it's great, thank you. When I talked to it, I was like, yes.
Yeah. Never made a motion to deny something because it's never made it that far, but this one, it's just like, it was such a, it was one word, it was one word, so we're like, okay, we'll just bring that up, and we didn't really talk about it.
Or you still actually do motion to authorize and every votes.
I don't think we've never had that.
Never.
Never had
You
a.
approve the vote, you approve the motions, the motion is denied, we all.
You did your motion was not.
Yeah, I think you had motions for, motion to, not everything.
Yep.
But I don't think we did that, like, unanimous.
Unanimous motion to be. That's weird.
A good opportunity, when we do have the direction.
That should be absolutely a topic we'll put on the agenda.
I also just say though, I feel like we have a lot to talk about.
We don't wanna
I don't
spend
want
the
to
whole.
take a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the end.
Yeah, I think we.
It won't be on the docket.
See the last.
5 minutes.
It will. And I did all of it. You know, today, I'm still behind. Respond with that. Hey, this- Is he was responding to the. Give him more. But I think they'll be understanding, knowing, like, hey, this. But you have to have faith in stuff. And that's why we're in these.
Can we reflect the minutes that it's do not have data on you?
Yeah. Something we're gonna follow up.
So with this presented. All right, so now it is up to. Normally I would like to start digging into things that are hanging out. However, in respect that we're gonna meet next week with council to set a docket. Might be. For us to wait. Discuss.
So next week, what I'm, the goal, they're not gonna, the document. It's the discussion. I broke it up this year so that they have time to discuss. I have some time to your things or make adjustments, then we're gonna have it for adoption. So it'll be adopted the same time frame as last year, but we just moved this to a meeting up. So I can get their feedback, so they're not making a decision on the same time. The goal, I'm gonna bring yours, I'm gonna tell you all your scoring. Then say this is how. Commission's recommendation, ultimately, you guys know you're a recommending body, so it's their decision. So for their colleagues, they were supposed to get those to me by today. Now, so. This week, and then I'll show them their colleagues, we can compare it next week, hey, like. Even if you prioritize as a, 1 and 2. They think something else should be there, but it's your chance to justify what things. I can tell you, I did get forward with an RFP. Feasibility. Find out on our document. I think it's right.
That made me, mentioning the study made me think of it when talking about the impact home standards, and you brought up the housing action plan. And you said this is from 2021 and will be updated. The process of updating our data about, that was used for that, what is?
So right now, I have an RFQ out for, all of this, some of that data, like what? The good thing is we did our housing. And it just needs some updates to be. And so we'll be hiring. We're already working with consultants. Now to do kind of our use analysis and to be appendices for our. We're getting some data there, but we also need data from the county. But the process, I mean, it's part of that, and will be part of the update. Less. I guess, well, the housing act that will be updated, yeah.
So we will have updated data to refer to when we are working on those sections. And I'll be like, we'll add that again, sort of thing.
Right. And we could. Bring the data to you and say, is this. Let's say. The data. The second data will be for that. Our vision. State required.
I just have one question. The funding for the next step. Where's that number? Top.
From the.
It,
And there's a gap.
sure, no, I was interested in that, if that, the funds that had already been in place.
And because it's specific to affordable housing.
That was-
Your question?
Allison, if you, the ACS just, it just gave the updated one through 2023, the 5-year plan, that's all used to make the piece of view. That's where they're pulling from, the American Community Survey, and then everything is updated from December 12th. And so you can start looking at what they used before, what data they use, and just look at the updated. You have. It's through 2020. I know, it's 250, yeah. It's up. You can actually go to the ACS 3%. There's all these training and everything we take on it, but you can look ahead.
Yeah, the trains don't take that long.
Nope.
They're pretty short. Long, different videos.
So the consultant is essentially just, they're using that information.
They're looking variety. Looking at what, and what plan recommendation. Recommend you adopt. They look at what our housing needs are, give you the correct. Already adopted. Some. And are to live here.
You're saying like the census stuff.
Yeah, so that's what they're gonna do is they're gonna take that.
They also look at like, how many like how much vacant land do we still
Yeah.
have?
Yeah.
In Belmont, whereas you get like,
All the housing stuff is based on set of ACS, but then the ACS, they give it to the state and the state's turn. So that's where they're generating that data, so it's all started. So it's available, so you can see, hey, they use this data, and if they don't, if it's something else they pull, but a lot of it, you'll see it's yes, DPO one or something like that.
Mhm.
And where they said they pulled from the appendix, you can see, okay, this is kind of how they made that idea. This is the actual data. You see some big changes in the data. And it's not, if they based on the last one, which should have done.
Any topics you did want to check through tonight? Yeah, catch up on. Last year, keep through this discussion. Rezone.
I'll try to pull some of these data together before. Those historic. Review my crack subdivision. And that it's consistent with the. Oh. Which allows for that flexibility with, variance requests. I can.
Or just, I mean, if you can pull up Rawlson's or whatever those, this other side, like the ones that just show like, hey, check it out, we have 30-foot lots here. So many
yeah, I mean,
30-foot lots.
you look at like a historic plat, and then you look at the GIS map, you can see how many are like, oh,
I was
if
thinking,
it's bigger than the little ones, then it's not.
Yeah,
or maybe the underlying lot still exists. Well,
Other two items that we get to, we start for next year. Triplexes, townhomes, and the hospital 1337. 30 seconds. And thoughts on how we want to tackle this?
That's interesting. I feel like both of those. Absolutely.
now we'll see where their priorities
and
Priorities, but also, yeah. Feel like I can guess how we would go, but. Back. Rate pass. So just whether it's worth it.
Because we have like,
Totally.
without me.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd say. I. I don't think either of those would take very long.
Yeah, I mean, that's still really just gonna. check.
Right, it's pretty straightforward. And I feel like triplex is fairly straightforward.
So the
Um,
ADUs and triplexes,
What's the difference?
That's a big part of the,
So the second ADU size limit is smaller than the first ADU or is it well,
technically,
but a
yeah,
triplex,
but if you did 1,500 square feet.
but you can do that right now, that's something allowed in technically, right? So it's, so there, the difference is the zoning will dictate the size of two, because you can build the first unit, your main home, as a home, however big you want, then 2,400 square feet split in two for the other remaining units.
Yeah. So, concept there is, I mean, cities build the same lot. They build the kind of. The build one house. Or you could build.
What about detached? Does our condominiumization rules allow, if you build two ADUs on a single lot, you already minimize it and create a 3-unit condominium on it? As long as there's no. Or unit lot subdivision, okay, that makes all sense.
To fit 2 ADUs or a triplex on lots, we may even in multifamily, that holds us back on multifamily development. Can we take that higher? And I know that that has been a very sensitive topic, but, nobody knows what's in the back. It's not very obvious whether or not there's more buildings or, in your backyard. Like, front side setbacks, secret, but anyway, that is something that I think might be worth bringing up with the council, like, it to modifying. And do we say that you get a lot coverage bonus if you have additional units? And if you only have one dwelling unit, then we keep it at the base level and then get a bonus, or is it like, increase that?
Well,
Yeah,
37.
so like if you have one unit, it's 35%, you have 2 units, it's 45%, you have 3 units. Sorry, I mean, those numbers came out.
No, I think that's 37 states, they're all about, they understand that because big more units, density's gotta go somewhere, so lot coverage diminishes with the amount of units, just increases.
Yeah.
So,
Which this gets into FAR, which we brought up years ago, and it was like, this is really complicated for plain little Leavenworth to get into FAR or area ratio, which is like, yeah, if your lot coverage is based on the number of units and, but I feel like, you know, are not getting into setback or height anymore, or other standards, but essentially just lot coverage. Maybe we could keep it.
I think it ties right in with triplexes and 2 ADUs on one lot, just to let the council know that that is something that we're concerned about, or that we think that this is something we're gonna face for sure. The minute we start talking about 2 ADUs, it's like, well, it's not feasible to build 2 ADUs because in almost every scenario we look at, especially if it's detached, coverage is an issue. And if that's gonna be an issue, and the whole thing we're trying to do is create more opportunities for development, especially infill development, this would be a very good time to look at this issue, and have them direct us to do something, or at least come up with some sort of an idea that they can then run with, right? Choose.
Going to. So much. You're gonna, but it's just gonna be.
Sure, just like condo, just, yeah.
So I think that it will be who of us strategies, just breaking some of the tool bites. Council maybe to attack 280s first.
Just because that's a requirement.
Correct, we're gonna have the leverage.
But so if we don't modify setbacks, it's functionally not possible. Build 280s, does that go against state law?
No, well,
No, because you could build teeny tiny babies.
you can build the ADUs, but they would have to be really.
You know, you could have really small dwelling units, which is great, like you did cottage or all. But on like small, you know, when you're talking about small infill lots, I think it's. Especially with the height limit, of like.
Yeah.
so much-
Well, it's like. But yeah, let's be honest, the ADU code can't be more restrictive than what you would.
So setback lot coverage restrictions, entry door locations, aesthetic requirements for design review. Shall not be more restrictive than.
So it's not,
As long as we don't make greater setbacks.
yeah, so it's not like, oh, you have an ADU, so lot coverage is even now more of an issue.
Let's permit ADU with the block line. If it less public.
That's one thing though, but there's a code, there's a provision in there. And ours would like. And would be damaged if we allow them to. The damage price. That would make sense in an area that doesn't. Cost. So maybe we would use it. Just speaking from our planning, I mean, they have a payment, they damage fence. They damage a car. So I would hate to have a bill right there. But there be somewhere out there. So.
And there, it just,
Our FAR, how long before our FAR is done in the year? We talked about it.
Two says that, two things that, like, we just, fight this battle one single step at a time. But the discussion was about duplexes, who we use, and let that discussion lead us to get to this point, as opposed to add an extra block to it.
feel like we could do 2 ADUs, because it's like we have about that. And then once we talk about 2 ADUs, it's like, okay, so we reviewed that and gone through the process and come up with some ideas about like, to make this more feasible, we propose some changes to lot coverage. And then, once we get through that, then triplex is a pretty small step. On top of that.
And if you're looking at units. Same.
Well, I don't know, like what she said, it makes sense to look at lot coverage. You know, so if you have 1 unit on a lot, then 75%, if you have 2 units, you can bump up to 40%, 45%, and 3 units, and so that way we could, it allows, you know, people that are trying to do this, the city shows understanding in the fact that it's gonna be tough to abide by this rule, but if you're adding infill units, which is what, again, the whole idea here, right? Then we would allow a little bit more lot coverage, so those infill units would be, you know, of a size that is, you know, usable.
We then go back and look at our affordable housing codes, I know we give the bonuses for. That for our affordable housing. then it's been so watch.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
incentive.
That's right.
I think we bumped it up. Okay. I mean, we look-
Or versus,
I know, and we need both. Need more housing stock, need more options. Not just the. But I want to make sure then the recommendation. More
Um, I would request. Next week, or if days. But for February's meeting. Second meeting,
incentives. Whole thing is other. Sorry.
just, should that,
And our one's pretty like in line, there's a few areas. In line.
so, should we have the opportunity? The other one, obviously, would be that. Which next week's gonna be discussion.
And even if we have a discussion.
Anything else for the council? Any other comments from the community? Get a motion to adjourn.
second,
Motion to adjourn, second was.
Second was,
You know what now?
Sorry about that.
The conclusion always happens so fast.
okay, Drew, adjourning.